John, we always try to get timely guests. I don't know that we're going to get more timely than the guy who manufactures the most bats in Major League Baseball when we have a bat issue. It's Kurt Ainsworth of Marucci.
Yes, co-founder of Marucci, Kurt Ainsworth, former pitcher. So I'm interested to hear what the former pitcher has to say about helping out all of these hitters in Major League Baseball, or at least some of the hitters in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I'm so old, John. I covered Kurt Ainsworth when he was an amateur at the Olympics in 2000 when they won the gold medal. Ben Sheets, a three hit the Cubans in the gold medal game. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk a lot about bat technology and where the bat is and is going. John and I are going to talk about the impact on the Yankees with those bats and where the Yankees are early, Garrett Crochet's contract, the Atlanta Braves stumble. We'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, later in the show, we're going to have somebody right at the center of the storm of the first controversy or big story, however you'd like to look at it, in Major League Baseball when Kurt Ainsworth, the co-founder and CEO of Marucci Sports, which provides the most bats in Major League Baseball, joins us. But this is our chance to, forgive me, John, bat it around a little bit. So why don't we do? Look, I was there on Saturday when this really became an issue, right? The Yankees hit 9 homers. They hit 3 to open the game off Nestor Cortez on the first 3 pitches. And of course, the way the conspiracy minded work in this country now, this became somehow like the Yankees had steroided up their bats and this was the Yankees alone. And of course, what we've learned over the last couple of days is these bats were being used somewhat last year. They're being used by players sprinkled all around the sport, and we're going to see a lot more of it now that there is success early on for some people. So, John, take the floor. Where would you like to go with that?
Well, it is quite a controversy. I will not forgive you for that pun, but it is quite a controversy. Certainly the Yankees cannot be blamed. Give them credit for ingenuity. It's unfortunate Lenny or Aaron Leonhardt, the guy who invented this bat, I guess, no longer with the team, but they still have his bats that he designed. And, he didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything wrong. They fit to the specifications. 2.61-inch diameter is the limit, and that's it. So, I mean, I think we're going to see more guys use it. But it's not probably for everybody. Aaron Judge says he's pretty happy with the way things are going. I think the Yankees have a great bunch of hitters. And, if this is part of the rule, maybe it's going to help, certain hitters in the future and now. And that's probably good for baseball, right? I mean, we need a little more offense in the game.
Yeah, John, in a column in today's Post, I compared it to the tush push, which was you could have been doing this for years, like lining up behind the quarterback and just pushing him to try to make a short yardage play. It wasn't against the rules. The bat has been hiding in plain sight for years. You could have redistributed the weight however you want, as long as you didn't break the spec rules in the Major League rule books. I think it's Rule 3.01 about what the spec rules are. There is no illegality here. What we've done is, gloves got bigger from the beginning of last century as it moved along, better, whatever. We've just learned with data science where the ball is hit on the bat, and it just kind of makes sense to move the thickest, hardest part of the wood to that area.
Right. I'm not a football expert, but personally, I would outlaw the tush push. I think it's very
Well, they're
juvenile
thinking
and
about doing
ridiculous.
that this
Well,
week.
they should outlaw that, but this is not that. I agree. I see the similarities, but to me, it was still at 2.61 inches. It is a minute difference. I mean, the bats have been used, and we haven't detected it, right? We've been covering games. It's not that obvious. If Volpe and some other guys hit the ball down there and they're able to hit home runs like that, and that's the way they do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I certainly get that the Brewers were upset, but look, the Brewers had another game last night, and what they give up in that game, 10 runs, 12 runs. So they're unfortunately at a pitching deficit right now. They've got a lot of injuries, Nestor Cortez isn't what he was. If the guy can use this kind of bat and it helps him, I think it should be fine. And, I'm not just saying that as a New Yorker. I'm saying that as a baseball fan. And I'm glad that we're getting a little more offense in the game. It looks like, anyway, for certain guys, not for a majority or a huge number, but certain guys will prefer this bat.
Yeah, I always believe that there's always unintended consequences to the point where you say, you're a New Yorker, like, hey, the Yankees opened this up for the world. I kind of think the Yankees rotation stinks. So, like, they might end up paying for this over the long term if everybody, gets these bats and
Right.
they're pitching. And to your point, John, a real starting pitcher, Freddie Peralta, pitched on opening day for Milwaukee. He held the Yankees to 2 runs in 5 innings, two short porch home runs that have been hit at Yankee Stadium since Babe Ruth. It's been Milwaukee is missing 8 of its top 13 pitchers, 6 on the injured list, now 7 with Aaron Savali, who did pitch against the Yankees, 1 suspended, Abner Uribe, and Jose Quintana started too late in spring training to be ready. So they pitched a lot of guys who threw meatballs, and I do think the bat helped. But just to your point, nobody for real who's real is complaining. We heard one pitcher from Milwaukee complain, but like everyone knew, like Francisco Lindor used this bat last year. Giancarlo Stanton used the bat. The Yankees were using this bat in spring training when they led spring training in homers. Everybody's watching everybody for tells. The bat's there. They know it's going on. If anybody had a problem, we would have had a controversy already by real people complaining about this.
Right.
Instead, real people are all playing catch up now, saying, oh, the Yankees did this quicker with more people than anyone. That's good for them. They might jump out to a start here because of it until everybody catches up.
Yeah, I'm with you. Good for the Yankees. Yeah, I mean, one Brewer pitcher was willing to go on the record and say it, but I'm sure you are as well, getting texts from people complaining about there's always something wrong in baseball and the Yankees are getting an advantage. So, I mean, there is complaints behind the scenes. I don't know exactly how many of them are lodging with the commissioner's office, but it's not going to go anywhere, I don't believe.
But John, like I tried to answer one of these people, and I realized when you're trapped in conspiracy mind, I decided to stop answering it. Is there were teams that had traject, which is the hitting machine, which has the complete film of an actual pitcher and is stuffed down to the T, like speed,
Right.
velocity, movement, dip, everything. There were some teams that did that, but because it was underneath the stands and 4 teams had it, you didn't realize those 4 teams were getting great advantages. Because this is out in the open, you're an idiot now who's talking about conspiracy theories. Like somebody's always ahead. The Yankees have been ahead on catcher metrics, for example, like being able to frame. Like somebody's always like the number of people who work in front offices to the point where a data scientist was the person who came up with this, right? An MIT grad. This kind of person didn't work in baseball 25 years ago. People are looking for edges, 1 and 2% edges, because at the highest level, those are dramatic. If somebody ever comes up with a formula to keep guys healthier, even by 5%, think about the advantage that would have. And every sports science group is working on it.
Oh, I'm with you. Good for the Yankees. I mean, it is a little bit of an advantage that they have the most money. They have the most analytics people. They have the most scouts, along with the Dodgers and a few other Royals are one of those teams. But certainly they can afford to do a little bit more. But you're right. Every team could have thought of this. It seems obvious now. We didn't think of it, but we didn't go to MIT. So good for Aaron Leonhardt. He's a hero for the Yankees. I wonder how his Marlins bosses, what they think of that at this moment. They're not big Yankee fans. The Marlins, as I'm here, you see him, Florida in background. That's a team that should start trying it at least, because it's not going to help everybody.
Yes. Well, John, I wasn't prepared for a world where the most valuable Aaron wasn't Judge or Boone.
I
It was
know,
MIT
right?
grad who was that. Let's just switch to the bigger picture. Yankees,
Right.
as we're speaking, they've got a game tonight. We're doing this on Tuesday morning. They've got their 4th game of the season. They swept the devastated pitching of the Brewers, beat it up over the weekend. Any early thoughts on watching them get out?
Well, I mean, their hitting looked great in spring training. We talked all about the injuries. I mean, you just referenced that the rotation stinks now. The rotation as is not good, obviously. Fully healthy, it is very good. But if all these guys were hitting up a storm in spring training, we didn't know it was the bats. All I heard was that the bats might have caused Giancarlo's injury, which I think is a conspiracy theory that's not going to go anywhere. But I mean, I do think the Yankees, those Bellinger was an MVP, right? Goldschmidt was an MVP. Chisholm wants to be an MVP. He's certainly very talented. They may be much better than we thought. It may not just be the bats, and they may be able to out hit their pitching mistakes. And I mean, right now it looks very good. But of course, as you mentioned, they faced the Brewers. And the Brewers are not only a small market team, they're a small market team at a major, major deficit right now. I mean, look at all those guys that are out for them or not ready in Quintana's case. I mean, it is interesting to see the start. We're not over the overall big picture. Can't be surprised that the Dodgers are off and not losing any games, and they're the best. And again, there are 4 or 5 teams that just can't get, they don't look like they're ever going to win, right? The Brewers, the Twins, the Braves. Have we ever seen this from the Braves? I mean,
So let's
chance to switch to the
can
National
I
League here. Yeah,
yeah, let's drill down, as a way to end this segment, John. Let's drill down on the Braves a little. We know you could survive an 0-5 start because we saw the Mets survive an
right.
0-5 start last year and finish with the same record as the Braves and get into the playoffs and make a run to the NLCS in Carlos Mendoza's first year. But this is 0-5 with Ronaldo Lopez now down with a shoulder injury, and their one big signing of the offseason, Jurickson Profar, suspended for 80 games for PD use, a masking agent that he suspended. If they were to make the playoffs, he couldn't play in the playoffs for them. John, are the Atlanta Braves 5 games into the season in trouble, or the fact that Strider and Acuna are sitting out there to potentially join the team at some point mean that they'll get it going?
Yeah, I'm never going to declare the Braves dead. They're an amazing team, an amazing organization. They do a great job. Obviously, Strider and Acuna are going to be coming back. We've seen so many comebacks before. The Astros were dreadful for the first month last year. They came back and made the playoffs. We saw the Nats in 2019. They were terrible for 2 months. They ended up winning the World Series. The Mets, not only 0-5, they were by the middle of May, they were 11 games under, and they came back and made the playoffs. So I'm not going to declare them dead. They did spend almost nothing. The only thing they spent on was Profar. I mean, I guess they got Verdugo for 1.5 million. They got a couple at the end, but that was their big signing. I mean, it's easy for me to say now, but I never liked that signing in the first place. The guy had one great year, and it was last year at age 30 or 31 or something like that. And as a guy who's been like, good every other year, and now we have to be suspicious. I don't know, people file this under conspiracy theory, but the guy was just suspended for drugs, and he had a crazy good year last year that earned him $42 million. The Braves do a great job. I mean, almost all their moves are great. Their signings are unbelievable. The Acuna signing, incredible, but that was a mistake. No matter, even if he hadn't failed drugs, 42 million for Jurickson Profar, I never got that.
Yeah, you're talking to an idiot who thought it was a good signing. So I own my mistakes, John. I thought he was good. But that I was look, you're
I'm
right.
not batting 1,000 either.
We should have had red flags of just how good a season it was at an advanced age without kind of like a lot of signal.
I don't know about red flags, but just looking at his track record, he's good every other year. So they got the 2 odd years. He's always bad in an odd year. Well, that's not a
They
good
better hope for
sign.
this money. He's good in some even years coming up. John, one last thing before we go here, because I find it an interesting signing. The 170 for Garrett Crochet and the Red Sox. Let me tell you why I find interesting on 2 levels. You take it wherever you want. Level number one is it does seem the Red Sox, who talked about full throttle last year, are a little more full throttle now, right? Bregman, Walker Buehler, now this, at a time where they might have the best prospect base. Some of these guys coming up for them. Campbell already is on the team. Roman Anthony's getting closer, Meyer, etc. The other thing is he is such a unique player to get this money. In the
Yeah.
history of the game, every other 9-figure contract for a pitcher, they had at least 800 innings. This guy has about 230 career innings because he was either a reliever or hurt, or a reliever because he had often been hurt. And now he had a terrific year last season, and he's here. I find it fascinating. I think it's an interesting gamble, but it does feel like on the profile, like it is a gamble because of the track record.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing it on the potential. He's got a great arm. He did have one good year, really good year last year, made the All-Star team. It felt like there was somewhat of a chance, unlike with Tucker, who's, position player, who's already made a lot of money. There was no way the Cubs were going to sign him. He's going to go to free agency. Obviously saw what Soto got. This is a case of a pitcher with an injury history. Makes sense for him to sign this. I think the Red Sox, I don't know, we'll see. I think this is quite a gamble. I'll put it that way. I'll say it's a gamble. Look, they've been killed for not keeping Mookie Betts, not going that extra distance. He's been on record saying he was willing to stay if they'd made the right offer. And I mean, this is like not quite Babe Ruth, but it's kind of bad, right? I mean, it's the guy who's winning championships and may win another one in LA. And that was obviously a miss, and I think they try to make up for it with Devers, and they signed him to a deal that seemed like an overpay at the time. Then when Soto signed, maybe not. Now he can't hit, so who knows with that? But I mean, to me, this looks like a make good. We're still trying to make good for missing out on Mookie Betts. So they have a lot of smart people there. I like Theo there, and certainly Breslow and Werner and Henry, but. I think this is a gamble. Not as bad a gamble as Xerox and Profar, but I think this is a gamble.
John, you mentioned smart people. Smart people have been at the front of baseball news this week. You mentioned Aaron Leonhardt, the MIT grad, who is kind of at the center of building this new torpedo bat. The guys who produce it are at Marucci. The CEO and co-founder of that is Kurt Ainsworth. He joins us next on the show. Look, John and I are really happy to have Kurt Ainsworth with us. Obviously, there's a lot of bat talk early this season. Kurt is a former major league pitcher, Giants, Orioles. I covered him when he won a gold medal in 2000 in Sydney for the U.S. baseball team that was managed by Tommy Lasorda. And he is the co-founder and CEO of Marucci Sports, who are involved with making the torpedo bats. So, Kurt, first let me say thank you for joining us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
So, Kurt, there's so many things I want to ask, and I just want to begin here. The bat has been hiding in plain sight for about 150 years. Why now? Like, why 30 years ago did somebody not say, hey, I kind of hit the ball here a lot. Why don't we make it fatter here? Take us through why is the revolution coming now?
Yeah, I don't really know. I think it's just been an industry that's been, we've used it one way for a long time. Let's just keep it going that way. And, when we started in 2019, we had our baseball performance lab here. When we brought in guys from the golf world that came in here and really changed bat fitting and asked players, why are you using that bat? In golf, you don't use the same club for every shot. So in baseball, why are we using the same bat versus every pitcher and in every situation? So it started back then. And then now you see with Torpedo Mania that's coming, it's, of course, when the Yankees have a lot of success, it magnifies things at a much bigger level.
You know what I want to add? First of all, Marucci Sports is the official bat of Major League Baseball and the biggest. You're the biggest supplier. I'm old, so I would have thought it was Louisville Slugger, but I'm living in the 70s, but it is Marucci Sports. What is your opinion of this? I mean, obviously it fits to specifications. I hear the limit is 2.61 inches diameter, and it is fits that. So what is your opinion of this bat? Is it really helping these guys? Because I've got a whole list of guys who are using it. There are a lot of guys using it. Some of them are hitting home runs like crazy, De La Cruz, unbelievably, but some of them are, frankly, just doing okay. Is it just helpful for some guys or many, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, we love it. Anytime you can talk about baseball and talk about bats and grow in the game, that's what we love at Marucci and Victus, right? Our two companies, we want to grow the game. So anytime we get the mainstream media talking about bats, this is perfect for us. But, of course, it's the players, right? The bat is one thing. When you look at the bat, Aaron Judge and some of these top players could hit with anything out there. Barry Bonds could have hit with anything. But when you start tweaking the bat and you have all these data scientists on teams now really studying the data that's out there, it is giving players a chance and these hitters a chance against these pitchers who are making up new pitches every year, and they're all throwing 100 now. And so we're trying to give the hitter a chance to get up there and perform better, because we always like to say, I've never seen a player run around the base after a home run not smiling. So we want more home runs, we want more hits, and that's coming from a former pitcher, of course. But this is fun. It's fun for the game for people to talk about it. But again, you still have to be a good hitter, and everybody at the major level is a great hitter.
So, Kurt, we've heard a lot of like Genesis stories of this, like where it started, mainly built around a former MIT grad, Michigan professor named Aaron Leonhardt. Is he literally ground zero for this? And can you take us through some of from concept to
Sure.
reality where things have gone?
Yeah, I think he was the one that brought it back to life. I think people have used this bat over the years. I think even back in like the 70s in Korea, people were using bats like this. And there's been training bats out there as well with these torpedo looks. But I think with now the data that all that's out there for all these players, they're seeing where the ball is impacting the bat. And now you have teams like the Yankees, the Orioles, the Dodgers, and other teams out there that are studying this data per player and specifically designing bats to where they're making the bat and put the mass where most of their contact is and giving these players a chance at the most success. So I think when you see these teams that are investing in these data scientists, like Aaron and like some of these other teams are doing, I think those are the teams that are going to have the greatest success. Again, you still have to select the right pitch. You still have to, depends on who you're facing that day, the weather conditions, there's a lot in it. But I think going back to, the end of the 23 season is when we started working with Aaron on this bat again. And then last year we did a run with Giancarlo Stanton, and he had that legendary postseason with the 7 home runs, and he was using a torpedo bat. We just didn't talk about it. And Francisco Lindor last year used a torpedo bat. We just didn't talk about it. It didn't really come to light until this year when the Yankees just hit 200 homers on the opening series.
Well, how popular was it? How prevalent? You've mentioned 2 great stars, Lindor and Stanton. How popular and prevalent was it last year at the beginning of this year, and how are the orders starting to come in a little bit, you think, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. Honestly, when you look at the bat, it looks funny, right? In certain ways, when you first see it, if you're a traditionalist player, and from my days of playing, I think the players would have told the guys, the data scientists, get out of here. I'm not using that bat. Well, now these players are buying into it and they're seeing the actual data. And I think that's what's different. And so, yeah, of course, now that they're having success, you're seeing way more players try the torpedo. The only part that's like challenging for us is that it's not for everybody, and you actually have to study where you're hitting the ball to see if it's right for you and where do you want to put the mass. So the teams that have these data analysts on, they have an advantage on that. But you have players now that are calling saying, "I want a torpedo bat."
So how many, I know you're the president, so you may be a little bit removed from this, but I talked to your lovely PR lady, and she suggested things were going very well there. How many orders are you getting, and are they from, kids, high school, amateur, as well as major leaguers?
Yeah, it's kind of across the board now, right? The major league level is setting the bar, and then now all the kids are out there saying, "I want to try that as well." So yeah, we're starting to get orders from the youth players as well. But I think from the major league side, they're all willing to try it, right? And again, you go through slumps as a hitter. If somebody gets hot with that bat, like last night with Ellie, he may use that bat for quite some time now. You never really know, right? Stanton used that bat last year, did really well with it. So I would think that if you have a lot of success, you stay with it. If you try it and don't have a lot of success, like a lot of hitters don't in baseball, then they may go back to their normal bat. But I think you're going to see this stay for a lot longer than our puck knob did. I don't know if you guys remember, a few years ago, we created a puck knob here in this lab for Paul Goldschmidt, and it put the weight below his hands, and he ends up won goal MVP that year. And so, I think that didn't take off as much. There was a lot of people that use it, but it was really just Marucci and Victus doing it. Now every bat company is making these torpedoes. So I think this is here to stay for a little bit. I think you'll see tweaks of it, but I think this is here to stay for a while.
Kurt, I don't know if just data scientists, but I know scientists always think about unintended consequences from anything that happens in the world. And you've brought up the name Giancarlo Stanton a couple of times. And
Yep.
he's ended up with a very rare injury for a baseball player, bilateral tennis elbow, in both elbows, right? Bilateral.
Right.
Do you think that these bats are part of this? And do you think there's in 6, 7 weeks, we might be dealing with a bunch of injuries uncommon to baseball players or unfamiliar to baseball players because they're changing the weight distribution of a bat?
Yeah, I don't see that being a big issue. I think it's, a lot of wear and tear on a lot of bodies, right? If you swing that many times and you're that big, I think that's more of the issue. I think really we're making these bats swing just like their normal bats. I think that's what people don't realize. It's not changing the way they're swinging the bat. It's just taking the mass from the very end, the last 4 inches, which statistically in a major league game don't matter, right? You actually don't have success out there, and you're just moving it down. So when we have this, this balance point index that we've, patented out there for Marucci Invictus that tells you how you swing your bat, it's not changing the number. It's not changing the BPI on your bat. It's just changing where the mass is. So I don't think it changes your swing or how it feels in your hand at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm just playing one here, but I mean, I think that's probably cockamamie. I can't imagine. And I'm the one who first wrote about it, a few weeks ago, that unnamed sources were suggesting that, there was a discussion of this at least. But I mean, I can't imagine that that's the issue. Certainly certain players swing harder than others, and
Yeah.
that's it, I think. I mean, I'm not a doctor again. I don't think Joel is either, but seems ridiculous to me. So what can you give us any numbers? I mean, at this point, people are saying, oh, it's unfair for the Yankees, but then I'm getting all sorts of things from, there's Caminero and De La Cruz and Lindor and whatever. What are the numbers right now of guys who are actually using it in game? But you said everybody's willing to try it, but how many think are actually using it?
Yeah, I think you're going to see it across all 30 teams. So this isn't one that's specific to the Yankees. I just think that it got magnified by the Yankees. I mean, Adley Rutschman used our Torpedo and hit 3 home runs, right, for the Orioles. And I think you're going to see players across the board using it. So I would say you're probably looking at 10 or 15% adoption now, honestly, across the board. And I think you're going to see more and more people test it and try it. I do think that this excitement for the game has now even bled into Major League Baseball. And these guys are the greatest hitters in the world, but they're seeing the success, saying, man, if it could help me, we're willing to try. So this is the first time we've seen any players willing to change so much and to try to help their game. So I really, truly think you're going to see, 50+% of the major leagues at least try some sort of a torpedo in the next few weeks.
Kurt, if I'm a player who kind of was not fully vested in this, but I'm now seeing the success.
Right.
And I'm starting from ground zero again. And I call up Marucci and I say, hey, I need one of these. Can you take us from soup to nuts? How long would it take for you to put one of these in my hand that could be game ready?
Yeah, the hardest thing is taking a guess of what torpedo they need because they're all specific to each hitter. Right. So, I mean, you would have to really ask the player if you don't have their data from their data scientist of telling us where they would want the mass in the bat. We would have to, look at the player and say, do you get jammed a lot? Do you hit it off the end? Where do you hit most of your balls before we make that bat? And then we would also just say, what bat are you swinging now? And try to match a torpedo to their same swing specs or their same BPI they have now. So in theory, we could turn that bat around in a few days, just like we do with some of the players now. I mean, a few days to a week before we get players bats. So you'll see guys that have ordered bats since the weekend that'll start having them this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading up on this, and I know the rule is a 2.61 diameter is the limit. So, I'm just looking at it. I can't tell, but what it is, I mean, I'm not a scientist or a doctor. How do you know it's exactly 2.61, or how much is it? Can you go in even further? And I mean, is there any concern that baseball is going to change the rules if this goes too well? I mean, it feels like there are a lot of guys using it. So, I think those complaints about the Yankees are specious. I don't think they'll go fly, and I don't think there's an issue. But what do you think?
No, I think Bryson Stott said it really well with the Phillies yesterday in his interview, or 2 days ago, his interview. And he said, players have seen this before. It's been out there. It just got magnified for the Yankees. But when you start talking about the 2.61, it's just at the biggest point. What we're talking about doing is expanding the barrel this way, not this way. We're not trying to make it bigger this way. We're trying to make it longer and take some of this extra wood down here and start shifting the barrel towards their hands. So Volpe, for instance, right? They showed that he hit more balls closer to the taper and had more contact here than he did towards the end of the bat. So now changing it for a guy like Anthony Volpe, moving some of the mass this way, you see the success he's having. The Yankees have studied all those at-bats that he had last year and saw that he hit more balls here than he did here. And so by being able to move that mass this way, not make it bigger, just make it longer and take it from the end of the bat where you don't have success, that's what we're talking about.
Kurt, you talked about the value of having the data that shows exactly where on the bat you hit the ball most often. Are swings and therefore bats like fingerprints, are all of these slightly different from like player A to player whatever? No two bats are exactly the same?
Pretty much. Yeah. And if you think about it, every day we wake up, we feel different. So do players. So There are some players that stay with the same bat every day in every game, but in theory, I mean, they study whoop bands now. They study other things that are out there. If you feel bad one day, you may need to swing a different bat, right? And I think that's the one thing we're trying to show people, and I think that's what players are now talking about more, which is good for our industry. Is you don't just have to be stuck in something just because it's always been done that way in the past. We always want people to ask the question: is why are we doing it that way? What can we do to give ourselves a chance? And, again, having success as a hitter is what we're trying to get out there right now.
Yeah, you were a pitcher, obviously a very good one. Helped win a gold medal. You mentioned it earlier. Do you feel guilty at all about this? You're hurting your brethren. I know there's a divide. What can you do
Look,
for the pitchers?
all pitchers think they can hit, and all hitters think they can pitch. And I guess what I would tell everybody is that, that's what you do when you're a former pitcher and you keep getting injured. You start a bat company. I think that's the best thing to do.
Okay.
No, I mean, look, the pitchers are ahead in a lot of ways. I mean, they're all throwing 100 now. They all have multiple pitches. Look at the average, right? I mean, the fact that they're using the same data in defense and how they're positioned in the field is just showing you that the batting average is going down, the strikeouts are going up. So, we're trying to do what's best for the game and what's best for the hitter. And of course, if there's ways we can make the glove better for a pitcher, we would do that as well.
Kurt, you used an analogy before that I found interesting, and you've referenced it a few times. Like you talked about, like a golfer doesn't use the same club over and over. And you talked about how players can feel different, that the atmospheric conditions, like what's the weather, who's the pitcher throwing what. Do you think a hitter should have a bag of bats that, like a golfer has, where it's like, oh, this guy's throwing 100, I have to have a different bat than a guy who's a finesse pitcher?
Yeah, it makes sense, right? If you think about it, you should. You should face, now that we know spin rates of pitchers and how they're pitching, you should pick the right bat that gives you the best chance against that spin rate and how they pitch you. So I think that's absolutely what players should be doing now.
Last question for me. I mean, how did this come about? I mean, you're a pitcher. When did you get started with this? Was your career over? Are you still going? Why isn't it the Ainsworth company? Why is it the Marucci company? Tell me how you got going.
Yeah, I'll give you the short story of it. Is I was still playing. I was with the Baltimore Orioles and got injured, and then came back to Baton Rouge to rehab. And Jack Marucci was my trainer here. And another player, Joe Lawrence, another former big league player, was rehabbing with Jack. He was playing football at LSU. He was a 27-year-old freshman, hurt his knee. I hurt my shoulder. Jack was our trainer. Long story short, Jack was cutting bats in his backyard after Nick Saban's practices. When Nick would yell at him, he'd go in the backyard and cut bats just for a release. And, after we're in our rehab for a little while, we decided, man, why don't we get with Jack and start a bat company? And Marucci sounds a heck of a lot better than Ainsworth or Lawrence. So that was back in 2004. So we celebrated, 20 years last year. We started in wood bats. And then in 2009, we broke off in everything else. But we always wanted to make the best wood bat out there. And it started with Joe and I being in the clubhouse. Honestly, I was a pitcher, so I didn't get great wood. And that was just commonplace. Pitchers didn't get good wood. And I'm like, wait a minute, they're walking guys to get to me. I need the best wood. And so we started saying we were going to start a bat company and give every player a gamer. Perfect bat. And that's what we call them, a gamer, is we were going to make sure every bat we sent out was going to be perfect. And so we wanted to change what the industry was doing at that time in the wood industry. And I think we've definitely impacted the wood industry. And then you see Victus come along and these other companies come along. And now you see more bats out there that are better. And I think we had a lot to do with that.
Kurt, as a way to wrap this up, and you've been incredibly kind with your time and your insight, you've mentioned a few times just how far ahead pitchers have. Pretty much all the new wave stuff has helped run prevention over the last, say, quarter of a century. Nevertheless, everyone hates change pretty much. And anytime you change something, you're going to get a lot of bite back. Is there any concern on your end that this bat could distort offense where guys, I get it, I can't take one of these bats and hit a major league pitcher, but somebody who could, does it increase exit velocity, distance, success to the point where they might have to come to you to the points of John's making about the diameter? Hey, we got to do something. We got to either make the diameter smaller. Do you fear that you've created a revolution that's going to end this revolution?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's that drastic. I think that you'll see guys get hot and come up and come down in baseball. It's just kind of a part of it. But no, I don't think this is that revolutionary to the game. I do think you'll see more success if it's done right. and you build the right bat, it's going to give guys a chance to have more success. I don't think it's going to lead to this crazy exit speeds and lots of home runs, but I think you're going to see more contact, which is what MLB wants as well, which what we all want. More contact, more balls in play. And I do think you'll see more home runs for the guys that do consistently hit it in the right spot.
Kurt, is a way to leave this. It is a subject. Again, John and I have covered thousands and thousands of over the years and certainly watched it. But we never think of the bat. It's hardly anything we
Right.
think of. Did we not think of something here that's obvious that we should have been asking you about this? What is at the beginning of the 2025 season the biggest issue in our sport?
Yeah, no, I think the excitement around the game, the change in the game has been good. I think the commissioner's done a great job speeding the game up, bringing a younger audience in, and now having people talk about bats. I think this is exciting. Changing the official bats to Marucci Invictus from Louisville Slugger, who's been there forever, have an iconic brand, have all the respect in the world for them. But to be able to change that, to change the uniforms, to Nike from Majestic for all those years, I think just this change and bringing this new energy to MLB has just been awesome. And I think you're going to see more and more of that to come.
Kurt, as I said, this is the story through the first week of the season. And
Yeah.
John and I can't thank you enough. You're right at the center of this storm and revolution and change. And your thoughts and insights on this were really interesting and helpful for a baseball fan. So we appreciate you joining us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. It was great.
Thanks, Kurt.
John and I, of course, thank Kurt Ainsworth for joining us. That was very insightful for a big story in baseball. John, hit or error?
We're going to stay on the bats here, and I'm very happy to give a big hit to a guy who is a big friend of the show, Pat Murphy, for his great quote about the situation. It's not the wand, it's the magician. He basically said, it's the pitching. It's our pitching, our team. It's not the bat. So good for Pat Murphy sticking up for the Yankees, in fact, with that great quote. A very colorful guy, and that's why we have him on the show. He is a colorful guy.
I will say this, John. I want to say I think I agree with that, but at the beginning of steroids, people would say, "Oh,
okay,
the steroids can't make you. You've got to be able to hit. Like if you can't hit or whatever."
Right.
Found out that things were distorted by those steroids. I wonder if the bats are steroided up now. John, for a hit or error, I'm going to go like you could be surprised, and I'm sure over the long season this is going to be folded in. But if I would have told you that Sean Burke, Davis Martin, Martin Perez, and Jonathan Cannon were going to make Major League history those are the four White Sox starters, 23 innings to begin the season, shutout baseball. The Chicago White Sox, what they lose, 121 last year?
Yes, 120.
120? Like, amazing. Like, so everyone talk, hey, I was in the ballpark when 3 pitchers, 3 homers on Saturday. You see stuff you never have seen before. That had never happened. If you would have told me a team was about to break this record, Dodgers, some other teams would have come to mind. But let's give it for Sean Burke, Davis Martin, Martin Perez, and Jonathan Cannon.
Amazing, and I have to apologize to the White Sox for all the terrible things I've said about them over the last year. Amazing. I mean, they do pretty good with these pitchers sometimes. Incredible, amazing. I'm sure even a good baseball fan probably hasn't heard of most of those. Martin Perez they have, but pitchers. But Burke was good at the end of last year. Got lost in the record-setting number of defeats that the White Sox have. But it's amazing. That's a good one, Joel. Good hit there.
Yes, that was the team that traded Garrett Crochet, their ace in the offseason.
Right.
The ones that opened the season with 23 straight scoreless innings. On the subject of people who do good jobs, Tommy Hogan, our producer, thank you as always. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, please rate and review us. The New York Post YouTube page, give us a view. And we're off and running with the season. Please stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.